Rashid ibn Abdullah al-Mansur considered himself a reasonable man, which was why he found it completely unreasonable that he was currently lost in the middle of the Reb al-Khali desert with nothing but a temperamental camel named Mustafa, who had already spit on him 3 times that morning. The merchant caravan he'd been traveling with had somehow managed to leave without him after he'd wandered off to answer nature's call behind a particular large sand dune. And now here he was, alone except for Mustafa's judgmental stare, trudging through endless waves of sand under a sun that seemed personally offended by his existence. His water skin was running dangerously low, his expensive silk robes were covered in sand and camel saliva, and he was pretty sure he'd just walked past the same rock formation for the 3rd time, which shouldn't even be possible in a desert this vast. Things were not going according to plan, and Rashid's plan had been fairly simple. Travel to Damascus, sell his father's spices for an outrageous profit, return home and finally have enough money to properly court Layla, the beautiful daughter of the local magistrate who barely knew he existed. Instead, he was going to die out here and become a cautionary tale parents told their children about why you should always tell someone before wandering off to pee. Just as Rashid was contemplating whether dying of thirst or being eaten by Mustafa would be the more dignified end, he spotted something glinting in the sand ahead, catching the sunlight like a beacon of hope, or possibly a mirage sent to torture him in his final hours. He stumbled toward it with renewed energy, falling to his knees and digging frantically until his fingers closed around something cool and metallic. It was a lamp, because of course it was a lamp. An ornate brass thing covered in swirling patterns and strange symbols that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Rashid had heard the stories, everyone had heard the stories, but those were just tales to entertain children and gullible tourists. Yet here he was holding what was unmistakably a Djinn's lamp in the middle of nowhere with nothing to lose except his dignity, which was already pretty. Much gone thanks to Mustafa's earlier contributions to his wardrobe. He rubbed the lamp, because what else was he supposed to do with it, and immediately regretted every decision that had led him to this moment as purple smoke erupted from the spout in a massive plume that formed itself into the shape of a woman who was so breathtakingly gorgeous that Rashid forgot how to breathe for several seconds. She had flowing dark hair that moved as if underwater, despite the complete absence of any breeze. Eyes that glowed with an inner fire that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Curves that would make poets weep and holy men question their devotion. And she was wearing an outfit that consisted of strategically placed jewelry, sheer silks, and an expression of extreme boredom as she examined her perfectly manicured nails. The Djinn woman stretched languidly, her form shimmering between solid and smoke, and looked down at Rashid with all the enthusiasm of someone who'd just been woken up from a very good nap to deal with yet another mortal's nonsense. "Right, here we go again," she said in a voice like honey and thunder mixed together. "I am Zahara, Djinn of the Lamp, bound by ancient magic to grant 3 wishes to whoever frees me from my prison. Standard terms and conditions apply. No refunds, no takebacks, no wishing for more wishes because I am not an idiot, and that loophole was closed about 3,000 years ago. What's it going to be, mortal? Let me guess, you want unlimited wealth, eternal life, or the heart of some woman who's way out of your league?" Rashid scrambled to his feet, sand cascading off him in small avalanches, his mind racing. Because this was actually happening, and he had 3 wishes, and he needed to be very careful about how he phrased them, because every story about Djinn emphasized that they were extremely literal, and love finding creative ways to twist wishes into cosmic jokes. He thought about asking for water first, because dying of thirst seemed like an immediate concern, but that felt like a waste of a wish. And he thought about wishing to be rich enough to marry Layla, but again, he had 3 wishes here, and he should probably think bigger. "I want," Rashid began carefully, wiping sweat from his brow and trying to ignore how the Djinn was now filing her nails with what appeared to be a small piece of solidified starlight. I want to be so desirable that no woman can resist me, so skilled in the arts of attraction that I could have any woman I want. Zahara stopped filing her nails and looked at him with an expression that suggested she was trying very hard not to laugh, which should have been Rashid's first warning sign, but his brain was currently too sun-addled and dehydrated to pick up on subtle cues. You want to be irresistible to women and skilled in the arts of attraction, she repeated slowly, as if confirming an order at a restaurant. Just to be absolutely clear, you want to be so good at attracting women that they can't help but desire you? Rashid nodded enthusiastically, already imagining Layla finally noticing him, falling into his arms, declaring her undying love, while her father grudgingly admitted that maybe the spice merchant as son wasn't such a bad match after all. Your wish is my command, Zahara said with a grin that would have terrified Rashid if he'd been paying attention to anything other than his own fantasies, and she snapped her fingers with a crack that sounded like reality breaking. Immediately, Rashid felt strange, a tingling sensation that started in his toes and rushed upward through his body like a wave of pure magic, and he looked down to see his dusty travel robes shimmer and transform into an elaborate costume of sheer veils, a jeweled top that left his suddenly flat and smooth stomach completely exposed, flowing pants that sat low on hips that were definitely wider than they'd been a moment ago, and enough golden bangles and chains to open a small jewelry shop. His body was changing, shifting, reshaping itself in ways that made his head spin. His rough, calloused hands becoming delicate with long painted nails, his chest expanding into curves that threatened to escape the minimal coverage of his new top, his face tingling as features softened and refined themselves, long dark hair cascading down his back in waves that hadn't been there moments before. "What did you do?" Rashid shouted, except his voice came out higher melodious, the kind of voice that could sing men into madness, and he grabbed at his new body in panic, feeling curves where there should be angle softness, where there should be muscle, and a distinct absence of certain anatomical features he'd been rather attached to. "You said you wanted to be irresistible to women and skilled in the arts of attraction," Zahara explained with the patience of someone who'd had this exact conversation many times before. "Well, congratulations. You're now the most skilled and beautiful belly dancer in all of Arabia, trained in all the arts of seduction and attraction that make women swoon. Women absolutely won't be able to resist you. They'll be completely captivated by your performances, throwing flowers and coins at your feet, declaring you the most gorgeous and talented dancer they've ever seen. You'll have women fighting over who gets to watch you perform, following you through the streets, composing poetry about your beauty. Technically, I gave you exactly what you asked for." Rashid stared down at his new body, at the way the veils moved in the desert breeze, at how his hips now curved in ways that seemed specifically designed for the undulating movements of belly dancing, at fingertips that suddenly knew exactly how to play finger symbols he didn't remember picking up, and realized with dawning horror that the Djinn was absolutely right from a certain extremely pedantic interpretation of his wish. "This isn't what I meant," he protested, his new voice carrying across the desert in a way his old one never had, and Zahara shrugged with theatrical sympathy. "Should have been more specific, Habibi, and honestly, you got off easy compared to the last guy who wished to be hung. Like a camel without specifying which part of the camel he meant. That was awkward for everyone involved. Look on the bright side, you're absolutely gorgeous. Now you'll never lack for admirers or employment, and you definitely won't die of thirst in the desert anymore because literally any caravan that sees you will fight each other for the honor of taking you to the nearest city." She paused, examining her work with what might have been pride. "I actually think I did some of my best work here. Look at those cheekbones, and I gave you natural talent for the movements too. You won't even need lessons." Before Rashid could formulate a response, or possibly his second wish to undo this disaster, Mustafa, The camel chose that moment to make his opinion known by walking over and eating the ornamental veil trailing from Rashid's new outfit, and Zahara burst into laughter that sounded like wind chimes in a thunderstorm. "Oh, this is wonderful. I haven't had entertainment this good in centuries," she said, wiping tears of mirth from her glowing eyes. "Tell you what, you still have 2 wishes left, and I'm feeling generous. So take your time to think about how you want to phrase them very, very carefully. In the meantime, there's a caravan coming over that dune in about 5 minutes. They're going to absolutely lose their minds when they see you. And I strongly suggest you start thinking of a good cover story for why the most beautiful belly dancer in Arabia is wandering around the desert alone with a camel who has terrible table manners." She started to fade back into smoke. Still grinning like this was the best thing that had happened to her in millennia. "I'll be in the lamp when you meet me. Try not to wish yourself into anything weirder, though honestly at this point, I'm not sure what could top this." Rashid, now Rashida, according to the knowledge that had somehow been implanted in his head, along with an encyclopedic understanding of approximately 73 different belly dancing techniques, stood alone in the desert trying to process what had just happened while Mustafa continued to eat his outfit. In the distance, he could indeed hear the sounds of an approaching caravan voices, calling out in excitement at spotting someone in the wasteland, and he looked down at his new body once more, at the way his hips curved at how even his breathing now seemed to move in rhythm, at fingernails painted in patterns that definitely hadn't been there before, and wondered if his second wish should be to turn back to normal, or if he should at least wait to see how much money. Gorgeous belly dancers made in Damascus because his original plan had been to make enough money to marry Layla. And technically he could still do that even if the method had changed drastically. Then again, would Layla even recognize him like this? Would anyone? His entire life had just been transformed by one poorly worded wish, and a djinn with a sense of humor that should probably be classified as a weapon. The caravan was getting closer now. He could make out individual figures pointing in his direction, with what sounded like very enthusiastic appreciation for his new appearance, and Rashid made a mental note that his next wish absolutely needed to include the phrases, "Exactly as I intend, with no unexpected side effects, and possibly, please stop being so literal about everything," though he suspected that last one wouldn't help much. Mustafa finished eating the veil and looked at Rashid with what might have been approval, or possibly just gas. It was hard to tell with. Camels, and somewhere in the lamp he'd dropped in the sand, Sahara was probably still laughing at the best. Pranks she'd pulled in centuries.